The first time I saw the Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, it was more rust than silver. Hidden behind an overgrown hedge on the corner of a decaying property, the car looked like it hadn't moved in decades. Its once majestic grille was tarnished, the chrome dulled by years of neglect, and a thin layer of moss crept up from the tires to the fenders. To most people, it was just another relic of better days. To me, it was a project waiting for redemption. The car sat behind an abandoned house that had recently gone up for auction. I'd been searching for a restoration project, something that carried history, not just horsepower. The Silver Cloud fit the bill perfectly. The VIN plate confirmed it was a 1958 model, one of the last to be hand-built before Rolls-Royce shifted to mass production. It wasn't just a car. It was a piece of art trapped in decay. I won the property in the auction, mainly because no one else wanted to deal with the repairs. The house was barely standing, the yard overrun, and the HOA had been sending violation notices to no one for years. They'd probably be thrilled someone was finally cleaning it up. I didn't know it at the time, but that assumption would prove to be very, very wrong. The first few weeks were spent clearing the property. The HOA's welcome letter arrived almost immediately, stuffed with rules and reminders about lawn height, paint colors, and garbage can placement. The tone was friendly enough on paper, but the way the community's president, a woman named Karen, signed it in bold, looping letters made it feel like a warning. She'd even underlined her title twice, HOA President. While the contractors worked on the house, I focused on the rolls. I had the car towed into my garage where I started stripping away years of grime and corrosion. Every turn of the wrench revealed a little more of what the car had once been. The interior, though ravaged by time, still held that unmistakable smell of aged leather and oak veneer. The steering wheel bore the faint imprint of its last owner's grip. There was something hauntingly personal about restoring it, as if I was piecing together someone else's story. Old service records and documents tucked in the glove compartment revealed that the car had belonged to a man named Charles Whitman. He'd bought it new in London, shipped it across the Atlantic, and apparently kept it until his death in the 1990s. The house, too, had been his. No heirs, no relatives, just a lifetime of things left behind. The Silver Cloud had likely been sitting in that yard since before I was born. By the third month, progress was visible. The body had been sanded and primed, the engine cleaned and partially rebuilt, and the interior slowly began to resemble something dignified again. Every weekend, curious neighbors stopped by to admire the work. Most were polite and supportive, but there was one person who wasn't. The first time I saw her, she appeared at the edge of the driveway like a sentry on patrol. Late 50s, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard that might as well have been a weapon. She didn't introduce herself. She just stood there, scanning the garage, her lips pursed into a permanent frown. The neighbors called her Karen, not as a joke, but as an explanation. She seemed to think the HOA's power extended to everything within sight. She'd pace slowly up and down the sidewalk, jotting notes, shaking her head whenever she caught me sanding or painting. Once I watched her lean over the fence, taking pictures of the car as if she were gathering evidence for a court case. When I tried to wave, she turned away sharply, pretending not to see me. Despite her surveillance, the restoration continued. Piece by piece, the Silver Cloud came back to life. The deep silver paint reflected the sky like liquid mercury. The chrome shone again. The leather seats, restored with careful precision, felt buttery and new. It wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about respect. The car deserved to exist again, to roll down a street like it once did, silent and commanding. But Karen didn't see it that way. She saw a project car in a driveway, and to her, that was a violation. The HOA rules stated that non-operational vehicles couldn't be parked in plain view, even temporarily. I had a tarp over it most of the time, but she'd find a reason to complain. I received 3 warning letters in 1 month, each one more threatening than the last. Then, one evening, I caught her in the act. She was standing next to the car, pulling at the tarp, snapping photos with her phone. When she realized I was there, she didn't flinch. She simply turned, smiled coldly, and walked away. Clipboard clutched to her chest like a trophy. The next morning, a new letter arrived. Final warning before HOA action. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I contacted the city, checked the local ordinances, and confirmed that everything I was doing was perfectly legal. The car was on my property. The The restoration was temporary, and the HOA had no jurisdiction over what happened inside my garage. I even sent a polite email to the HOA office outlining the facts. Days went by with no response. The house repairs wrapped up and the driveway looked pristine. The Silver Cloud gleamed proudly under the morning sun, fully restored and more beautiful than ever. I felt a rare kind of satisfaction, the kind that comes from seeing something through from ruin to perfection. Then came the knock. It was a crisp Saturday morning when I opened the door to find Karen standing there, arms crossed, wearing that same pair of sunglasses, even though the porch was shaded. Her smile was tight, rehearsed, and artificial. Without saying a word, she gestured toward the driveway, where the Silver Cloud sat shimmering like liquid metal. For a long moment, she just stared at it. Then she said something I couldn't quite hear, and pointed at the Rolls Royce like she was identifying stolen property. Her lips moved slowly, deliberately. Though I couldn't hear her words from where I stood, I could read them clearly. "That's my car." And just like that, everything I thought was finished had only just begun. The moment Karen said those words, that the Rolls Royce was hers, something in the air shifted. It wasn't anger at first, or even disbelief. It was confusion. I'd spent months breathing new life into that car, hours buried under grease and paint, tracing every inch of its history. There was no doubt about where it came from. And yet, the way she looked at it, standing there with her clipboard clutched to her chest like a badge of authority, made it clear she wasn't joking. After she left, I replayed the moment in my head over and over. Her tone, her expression, the certainty behind her words. There was no request for explanation, no curiosity, just ownership, as if she had been waiting all along for the right moment to pounce. That night, I went back through the paperwork I'd found in the glove compartment, the old registration cards, the faded maintenance receipts, even a photograph of the car parked in front of the same house decades earlier. Every document led back to one name, Charles Whitman. There was no mention of anyone else. 2 days later, a letter appeared in my mailbox. This one wasn't from the HOA office. It was hand-delivered, folded neatly into an envelope with no return address. Inside was a printed note that read, "You are in possession of private property belonging to the late Charles Whitman estate. Please prepare to return it immediately. Failure to do so will result in legal action." There was no signature, just a set of initials typed in bold. K.M. Karen's name was Karen Matthews. The irony of her demanding something that had clearly been abandoned for decades would have been laughable if it didn't feel so calculated. She had escalated things from annoyance to accusation in record time. I wasn't sure if she was bluffing or if she genuinely believed she had some claim to the car. Either way, it was unsettling. I decided to look deeper into the property records. The title transfer from the auction was clean. The house, the land, and everything on it were legally mine. If the car had been sitting there when I purchased it, it was included as part of the property. Still, I wanted to be absolutely certain. I contacted the county clerk's office and confirmed it in writing. Everything checked out. There was no record of any outstanding estate claims, heirs, or liens. Karen, however, didn't care about paperwork. A week later, she appeared again, this time accompanied by a man in a suit. He stood at the end of the driveway while she spoke animatedly, pointing toward the Rolls Royce and gesturing as if she were giving him a tour of a crime scene. He nodded occasionally, taking photos and jotting notes on a small pad. I didn't need to hear their conversation to know what it was about. They stayed for almost 20 minutes. When they left, she gave me a final look, a smirk that said she thought she'd already won. The following morning, I received an official-looking letter from a law firm. It was printed on heavy paper and bore a watermark seal. The letter claimed that Karen was the rightful owner of the Rolls Royce, alleging that she was the executor of Charles Whitman's personal effects and that the car had been illegally removed from estate possession. The accusation was absurd, but it carried weight. She had managed to turn her baseless claim into a legal threat. I wasn't about to let her bully me. I reached out to my own attorney and handed over everything: the auction documents, the property deed, the car's VIN, and the correspondence I'd received. My attorney, a calm man with decades of experience in property disputes, skimmed through it all and shook his head. "There's no merit here," he said. "If she was executor, she'd have filed a claim years ago. This is intimidation, nothing more. Don't engage directly." For a while, I tried to follow that advice. I ignored the glares from her across the street, the HOA letters that suddenly multiplied again, and the whispers among neighbors who clearly enjoyed the drama. But then the situation took a darker turn. One morning, I stepped outside to find the Rolls Royce covered in bright orange stickers, large, adhesive warning labels that read illegally parked vehicle and property under investigation. My first thought was that the city had done it, but the city clerk later confirmed no such notice had been issued. Whoever had put those stickers there had done it without any authority. I peeled them off carefully, but the residue left behind marred the car's perfect paintwork. That detail cut deeper than I expected. I had spent months restoring every inch of that car, and now, because of her obsession, it was being vandalized under the guise of enforcement. When I checked the security camera footage from the night before, there she was, Karen, in her robe and slippers, marching up the driveway around midnight, armed with a flashlight and a roll of orange stickers. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. She paused several times, looking over her shoulder, then pressed each sticker onto the car with deliberate precision. She even took photos afterward, as if documenting her handiwork. That video became my shield. I sent a copy to the HOA board, the local police, and my lawyer. The HOA distanced themselves immediately, saying her actions were personal and unauthorized. The police agreed to look into it, though they warned me that it might qualify only as a civil matter unless I could prove damages. Still, I knew I had leverage now. For a brief moment, I thought that might end things. But Karen didn't retreat. If anything, she doubled down. Over the next few weeks, she began spreading rumors throughout the neighborhood. Whispers that I had stolen the car, that I was flipping old vehicles illegally, that I had moved into the property under false pretenses. The stares from once friendly neighbors grew colder. Invitations stopped. Conversations ended when I walked by. It was like watching a fog of suspicion roll in, and I could trace it all back to her. Then one afternoon, as the sun set and the silver cloud glowed in the fading light, I noticed something new. A small white tag had been taped to the car's windshield, fluttering in the breeze. It wasn't an HOA notice this time. It was a tow warning. Vehicle scheduled for removal within 48 hours, pending ownership verification. It bore a company logo, a towing service I'd never heard of, and a signature scribbled in blue ink, K. Matthews, HOA President. I felt the anger rise, slow and controlled. She wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was trying to take what I had built. And if she thought I'd let her, she was about to learn how wrong she was. The tow notice sat on the windshield like a declaration of war. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it, reading the words over and over, feeling a slow burn build in my chest. It wasn't just the audacity of what she'd done, it was the quiet confidence behind it. Karen had no authority to authorize a tow, no right to claim ownership, yet she had signed the order anyway. She wanted to force my hand, to make me react, to drag me into a public scene that would make her look like the one in control. But I wasn't about to play her game. The first thing I did was call the towing company listed on the notice. The voice on the other end sounded bored and detached until I mentioned my address and the make of the vehicle. Then the tone changed. The man hesitated, coughed, and said they had received an urgent request from the HOA president regarding an abandoned vehicle. I asked him to check the authorization paperwork. A few clicks later, he admitted it had been signed not by the HOA management office, but by a resident, Karen Matthews. That was all I needed to hear. I told him calmly that the vehicle was fully registered, legally owned, and sitting on private property. If anyone attempted to tow it, I would consider it trespassing and theft. He quickly backtracked, apologized, and promised the tow order would be canceled. Still, the thought of Karen standing there, writing out that fake authorization with her self-appointed authority, made my stomach turn. I imagined her pacing around her kitchen, pen in hand, convinced she was protecting the character of the neighborhood. She wasn't just meddling anymore. She was obsessed. That night I couldn't sleep. The security cameras were running, the garage was locked, but I still felt uneasy. I checked the footage around midnight, half expecting to see her creeping around again. Nothing. Just the quiet glow of the streetlights reflecting off the silver cloud's polished hood. The next morning, I decided it was time to stop reacting and start documenting everything. I printed every letter, every photo, every email. I compiled timestamps from my camera footage and created a folder labeled HOA Dispute Karen Matthews. My lawyer told me to stay calm, to avoid confrontation, to let the evidence speak for itself if it came to that. But in neighborhoods like this, it's never that simple. 2 days later, during a rare quiet afternoon, a commotion outside drew me to the window. Karen was in the street again, this time flanked by 2 HOA board members. They were all dressed neatly, like they were heading to a meeting, but their attention was fixed on my driveway. I stepped outside just as one of them was taking pictures of the car. From the distance, I could see Karen talking rapidly, gesturing toward the Rolls Royce like it was a problem that needed solving. The board members nodded politely, but their faces looked uneasy. They were listening but not agreeing. When they saw me watching, Karen froze, then gave me that same hollow smile she always did, the one that didn't reach her eyes. She turned back to the group, speaking faster now, waving her clipboard. I couldn't hear her words, but I recognized the rhythm. It was the tone of someone spinning a story, rewriting reality as she spoke. After a few minutes, the other board members excused themselves and left. Karen stayed behind, standing in the street, staring at the car for nearly a full minute before walking away. Later that evening, I received an email from the HOA office. The subject line read, "Clarification regarding recent vehicle concerns." The message was brief. They confirmed that the association had not authorized any towing or enforcement action, that Karen's actions were not sanctioned, and that she had been reminded of her limits as president. It should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. People like Karen didn't stop because they were told to. They just changed tactics, and sure enough, she did. Within a week, anonymous complaints started pouring into the city's property enforcement department. Reports of unlicensed auto work, commercial use of residential property, and noise disturbances. Each one was almost identical, written in the same phrasing, as if copied from a template. The inspectors came by 3 times in 1 week. Each time they left shaking their heads, apologizing for the inconvenience, explaining that they had to follow up on every complaint. It became obvious what was happening. Karen had turned the system into her personal weapon. But what she didn't know was that every visit, every inspection, was adding to my growing file. My lawyer encouraged me to stay patient. The more she acted out, the stronger my case became. So I waited. I smiled when I saw her. I waved when she passed by. Every polite gesture seemed to fuel her anger even more. Then one night, everything changed. It was close to midnight when I heard a soft clatter from outside, a sound too deliberate to be wind. I checked the security feed and froze. The grainy black and white footage showed a figure creeping along the side of the garage. Karen. She was holding something, a set of keys maybe, or a small flashlight. Her movements were careful, hesitant, but purposeful. She stopped at the side door, tugged on the handle, and then tried again. It was locked. She paused, looking around, and then pulled something from her pocket. The motion sensor light flicked on suddenly, flooding the driveway with light. She froze, blinded for a moment, then bolted, sprinting across the yard and disappearing into the shadows. I played the footage back 3 times just to be sure. There was no mistaking her. It was her. By morning, my lawyer had a copy of the video, and the police had a report. They didn't arrest her, not yet, but they did show up at her door. I didn't hear what was said, but word spread fast. Neighbors began whispering again, only this time not about me. Karen stopped her daily patrols after that. Her curtains stayed drawn, her driveway empty. For the first time in months, the street felt calm. The HOA meetings went quiet. Even the board seemed to avoid her. It was as if the entire neighborhood had collectively exhaled. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. I spent my days polishing the Silver Cloud, taking it out for short drives, letting the engine purr softly through the streets it had once called home. The car had finally become what it was meant to be again, a symbol of craftsmanship, beauty, and peace. But peace never lasts long when someone like Karen feels cornered. About a week later, as I was returning from a short drive, I noticed something strange. A white sedan was parked across the street, engine running, driver's window down. The woman inside wore large sunglasses, her hair pulled tight, her face partially turned away. Karen. She wasn't taking notes anymore. She was just watching. And as I parked the Silver Cloud back in the driveway, she lifted her phone, snapped a single photo, and drove off without a word. Something told me she wasn't done, not yet. The weeks that followed felt strangely calm, but it was the kind of calm that doesn't last. The kind that sits heavy in the air before a storm. Karen's surveillance had stopped, or at least I thought it had. No more HOA letters, no more surprise visits, no more anonymous complaints. Her blinds were always closed now, her driveway empty, her garden unkept. She'd become a ghost on her own street. But ghosts don't vanish, they wait. One crisp Saturday morning, I decided to take the Silver Cloud to a local classic car showcase downtown. It felt like a fitting way to mark the end of a long ordeal. The car gleamed like a mirror under the sunlight, polished to perfection, every line and curve restored to its original grace. When I pulled out of the driveway, neighbors stepped outside to watch. Some waved. Some just stared. Even those who had once doubted me couldn't deny what the car had become. The drive was smooth, serene, almost meditative. For the first time, the Rolls Royce wasn't a project or a burden. It was mine. The engine purred. The steering was soft, and as I cruised through the streets, I could almost hear the applause of its original maker. At the showcase, the Silver Cloud drew a crowd almost instantly. Collectors admired the workmanship, photographers took pictures, and judges asked questions about the restoration process. I told them the story, carefully edited, how I found it, the effort it took to restore it, the history behind it. I didn't mention Karen. When the awards were announced later that afternoon, the Silver Cloud won Best in Restoration. A small plaque, but to me it felt like vindication. I'd done it. I'd turned a forgotten wreck into something extraordinary again. But as I was preparing to head home, a commotion stirred near the parking lot. I saw 2 police cars pull up, lights flashing. Officers stepped out and began talking to the event organizers. A minute later, one of them started walking directly toward my car. My stomach dropped. The officer asked my name, then requested proof of ownership for the vehicle. Apparently, a complaint had been filed that morning, claiming the Rolls Royce was stolen property. The description matched my car exactly, right down to the license plate. And the name on the complaint? Karen Matthews. Even at her quietest, she hadn't stopped. She'd just been waiting for her grand move. I handed over every document I had. Registration, restoration records, property deed, the old title history. The officer examined them carefully, comparing VIN numbers and dates. When he finished, he nodded slowly and said, "Everything checks out. You're good to go, sir." He didn't say her name, but he didn't have to. His expression said it all. He'd seen this sort of thing before. Someone who couldn't let go of control, no matter how wrong they were. Still, the incident left me rattled. I drove home in silence, every reflection of the car's polished chrome reminding me that obsession, in the wrong hands, could be just as destructive as neglect. When I turned into my street, Karen's white sedan was parked across from my house again. She sat there, staring, her sunglasses reflecting the car she still seemed to think belonged to her. I parked the Rolls in the driveway, stepped out, and for a long moment neither of us moved. Then she got out. Her hair was disheveled, her posture rigid, but her voice, though trembling, was steady. She began talking fast, though I couldn't hear her words at first. Her hands moved erratically, gesturing toward the car, then toward the house, then to the street itself. It wasn't an argument anymore. It was something else, something that looked a lot like desperation. She kept repeating one phrase louder each time. I finally caught it. It was supposed to be mine. Her words echoed down the street, sharp and bitter. Curtains shifted in nearby windows. Neighbors peeked out. The quiet cul-de-sac turning into an audience once again. She went on, recounting a story that didn't make sense. That she had known the car's original owner, that he had promised it to her before he died, that I had somehow stolen it from her destiny. It wasn't anger in her voice anymore. It was conviction. She truly believed it. The police arrived within 10 minutes. One of the officers, the same one from earlier that day, gently approached her. She didn't resist. She just stood there, arms crossed tightly, still talking, though now to herself. As they guided her toward the patrol car, she turned her head toward the Rolls Royce one last time. Her expression wasn't hatred anymore. It was loss. The days that followed were quiet again, though this time for good. Karen's house remained empty after that night. The HOA sent out a brief notice weeks later, saying she had stepped down from her position due to personal reasons. A for sale sign went up shortly after. No one seemed to know where she went, and no one asked. For the first time, the neighborhood felt normal. The constant tension was gone, the meetings grew friendlier, and people began stopping by to admire the Silver Cloud again, this time without suspicion. It became something of a local landmark, the car that outlasted the drama that nearly tore the street apart. Sometimes late at night, I'd step outside and look at it resting quietly in the driveway. The chrome caught the moonlight, gleaming softly, serene and unbothered. I'd think about the journey it took to bring it back, the rust, the work, the fight, and everything in between. And I'd realize that what I'd restored wasn't just a car. It was control. Over my home, my peace, and my right to live without someone else's delusion shaping my world. The Rolls Royce Silver Cloud had survived neglect, decay, and even madness. Now it simply existed, beautiful, silent, and entirely mine.